Hello everyone, welcome back. I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it for a moment before you answer. Have you ever had a stretch of time where nothing was dramatically wrong, but everything just felt off? Your energy was low but not zero. Your digestion was uncomfortable but not unbearable. Your mood was flat but not broken. Your focus was scattered but you could still function. Nothing bad enough to call a doctor about. Nothing specific enough to explain to someone else. Just this persistent, low-grade sense that your body wasn't quite running the way it should. This is actually one of the most common and most underappreciated patterns in young adult health, and research is beginning to build a clearer picture of why it happens. It doesn't usually start with a dramatic event. It starts quietly, gradually, in the gut. According to studies examining the relationship between gut microbiome composition and systemic health outcomes. Chronic low-grade gut dysfunction, not the kind that lands you in a hospital, but the kind that just quietly degrades your quality of life, is far more prevalent among young adults than previously understood. One large-scale study that analyzed health data from adults between the ages of 20 and 40 found that a significant portion of participants who reported feeling persistently fatigued, mentally foggy, or emotionally dysregulated had measurable markers of gut inflammation and altered intestinal permeability. They weren't sick in any conventional, diagnosable sense. They were simply living in a state of chronic biological friction. I think about it like this. Imagine your body is an orchestra. Every system, digestive, immune, nervous, hormonal, is a different section. When the gut is functioning well, it's like a conductor keeping everything in time. The immune system knows when to activate and when to stand down. The nervous system gets the chemical signals it needs to regulate mood and focus. The hormonal system can do its work without interference. But when the gut is struggling, the conductor goes off tempo. And when one section loses the beat, the others start to drift too. Nothing collapses entirely, but the music stops sounding right. This is exactly what researchers studying the gut-immune connection have been documenting for years. Roughly 70% of your immune system is housed in and around your gastrointestinal tract. It makes evolutionary sense. The gut is the primary entry point for everything that comes into your body, so it's where your defenses need to be most vigilant. But when the gut lining becomes compromised, when that barrier function weakens due to poor diet, chronic stress, sleep deprivation, or antibiotic overuse, the immune system shifts into a state of sustained low-level activation. Researchers call this chronic low-grade inflammation. In a study that looked specifically at young adults reporting unexplained fatigue, researchers found that participants with higher levels of certain inflammatory markers associated with gut permeability, also scored significantly worse on measures of cognitive performance and emotional regulation. These were not people with a diagnosis. These were people who just felt off. And the gut was at the center of the picture. What makes this particularly important for our age group is the timing. The habits we build in our 20s and early 30s are not neutral. Research on microbiome development suggests that the microbial ecosystem we cultivate during young adulthood has long-term consequences for immune function, metabolic health, and even neurological resilience. A study following dietary patterns across age groups found that individuals who consistently consumed low-fiber, high-processed diets during early adulthood showed accelerated decline in gut microbial diversity over time, and that diversity loss was associated with higher rates of inflammatory and metabolic conditions later in life. The choices feel small in the moment, the compounding effect is not. So what actually shifts the trajectory? Based on what the research keeps pointing toward, a few things stand out with real consistency. Dietary fiber remains foundational, not because it's trendy, but because it directly feeds the bacteria that produce the short-chain fatty acids your gut lining depends on to stay intact. Polyphenols, the compounds found in colorful vegetables, berries, olive oil, and green tea, have shown in multiple studies to selectively feed beneficial gut bacteria while suppressing inflammatory ones. Fermented foods appear to improve microbial diversity in ways that even high-fiber diets alone don't fully replicate. And sleep, genuinely restorative sleep, gives the gut lining the repair window it needs, because the cells lining your intestinal wall have one of the highest turnover rates in the entire body and are extraordinarily dependent on rest to regenerate properly. One study I found particularly compelling examined what happened when participants simply increased their intake of diverse plant foods, aiming for 30 or more different plant varieties per week, which sounds like a lot but adds up faster than you'd think. Within 8 weeks, participants showed significant improvements in microbial diversity, reductions in inflammatory markers, and self-reported improvements in energy levels and mood. Not a pharmaceutical intervention. Not a dramatic elimination diet. just variety, just plants, just consistency. I want to leave you with this. The feeling that everything is off is your body's way of telling you that something in the system is out of alignment. And more often than not, that misalignment begins in the gut. Not because the gut is the only thing that matters, but because it is so deeply connected to every other system that when it struggles, the effects spread outward in ways that can be genuinely hard to trace back to their source. You don't have to wait until the symptoms become serious to start paying attention. In fact, the whole point is not to wait. The body whispers before it shouts. And the whisper, that low-grade, hard-to-name sense that something isn't quite right, is worth listening to now.